So the subject of today's video is going to be the 1981 Honda XL125 with the 1980 Honda XL185 motor in it. So recently I went through the process of having this bike registered for the road. So now currently I've got a plate and stickers on the way in the mail, and it's currently also now insured, so I can use it on the road as well. But before I can start using this on the road, there are a handful of things that need to be finished up with this bike so that it's roadworthy. So let's pop the bike up on the lift and we'll go over the few things that we need to take care of now in this video so I can start using this on the road. So the first thing I want to touch on, and this is something I did off camera the other day, was when I originally restored this bike, I took the original Cayenne carburetor, off the bike, and I just did a basic cleanup on it. Now, one thing I noticed was that I was getting gas leaks around the fuel air adjust here, and the bike just wasn't running right. So what I did was, focus back on the bike here again, the old ATC 70 over here in the corner, when I first purchased that, it had no motor, so I bought a YX140 Piranha motor for it. So let me see if I can tighten this up here. And that came with what appears to be a Japanese Mikuni carburetor. I didn't have any luck with it on that bike, or on that little trike there, because I had to build my own intake to come out through the side of the, or past the side of the tank, because it wouldn't fit under. But when I put it on the Honda here the other day, just to test it out, this was the result. So this one has a manual choke as opposed to the cable choke, but the cable choke is still on there right now. But I'll just quickly show you. Flick the key on, make sure the bike's in the on position. Bit of manual choke. So it runs really well on that carburetor. So I'm just going to stick with that for now, and I'll probably order a carb kit and rebuild the other carburetor so then I've got the spare. So that's number one, and we're already done that. So the first couple things I want to address with the XL before we put it on the road are a couple minor mechanical issues. The first thing I want to do is, I noticed that right here, let me get a screwdriver so I can point it out a bit more clearly. Right here where the flywheel cover is supposed to squish down its gasket on this little surface right here. This was cracked off, and it was always cracked off, and I was hoping that with this back on after it was rebuilt that I wouldn't get any oil out of here, but there's a bit of oil leaking out of here. So when the bike is running, you can see it's kind of wet there now. What it does is it just pisses out a little bit of oil here, and it'll build up down here in the little the belly pan or whatever. So first thing I want to do is drain the oil, get this off, probably come in here with some RTV, and that way I can seal this up so it's not going to leak on us. The second thing we're going to deal with on this side is this broken screw hole right here. So when I finished the motor, or when I first had the motor stripped down, what I did here was I used a bit of JB weld, and the JB weld ended up snapping back out of that hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to clean this up, try to get some more JB weld on it, and hopefully we can get that to stay bonded and get a screw in there. That'll keep the, I guess, the sprocket guard and all this on and tight. So that's the first couple things we're going to look at. Let's move on and look at a couple other things we need to address. So looking at the ass end of the bike, we can see we're missing our taillight as well as our rear blinkers. Now I've got the blinkers, a new tail light and ball hardware right here, but there's one issue, and that's with the taillight housing itself. So here are our blinkers. Those are all done and good, ready to go back on. But when we look at the taillight housing, this is the situation we have. So here's our taillight housing. The plate mounting part is actually broken off. Now I can probably cut this and have my buddy Mark print something up for me that I can just bolt onto this. It'll hang down a tiny bit, sort of like the original one, and I can put a picture of the original one up here now so you can see what I'm talking about. The other thing is this taillight housing is pretty haggard. Now I'm going to have to do some testing on this, and to do that I'll probably just pull the battery out of the bike, get some wires hooked up, and make sure this is going to work for us. But we're going to have to clean this up, get a bit of silver paint or some such in there, and then see if we can get a bulb in there to stay in, work, and try to get that then back on the bike and get everything hooked up. So then the last thing I'm going to want to do is actually get the speedometer working. So I put a new speedometer cable on this bike. You can see here it is, and it runs up and into the back of our Speedo. But for some reason, that is not twisting, so it's not spinning up our Speedo. So it's either not engaged down here on the Speedo gear in the front hub, or it's not engaging up here in the speedometer itself. So what I'll probably do is we just pop the speedometer off and test that first with the cable. I'll just put the other end of the cable in the drill and spin it, and we'll see that this is working properly. And so once we confirm that that's working, we can go ahead and actually focus on the getting the cable hooked up correctly so it's going to spin for us. And then finally here on the back of the bike, I just pop over here to my little parts bin that I've got for the XL. Just a couple small odds and ends left to go back on. So if I pull this stuff out of the box, we got 3 more pieces here. So we've got a chain guard that we're going to need to put on, then the plastic chain guard to clean up and also bolt on, and then finally, and I'm not sure if I'm going to put this on or not, we'll see once I get the taillights on, but I'll have to clean up this rear rack and then get that painted and pop that on the back of the bike as well. So step 1, let's get back to here, let's drain the oil out of the bike, get all of this off, and see if we can get this sealed up, cleaned up and sealed up with some RTV. So here when we take a look at the engine guard, or the belly pan, or whatever you want to call it, you can see we've got a bit of oil right here. And that's purely being flicked out around that that little opening on the flywheel cover there. So I'll get this cleaned up and put aside. I'll start draining this oil, and then I'll run it and pick up some Permatex. That's the oil drained out of the bike. I just got back from popping out to a local auto supply place and picked up a tube of Permatex Ultra Black. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the filter and the oil cap back on. Go ahead and pop this cover off and have a look at getting that one little spot there sealed up. we take a little look at the alternator cover, the flywheel cover that has the alternator built in here, you can see that, if I can get this on camera, there's a slight crack in that case, and there always was, and I was kind of ignorant of this, hoping that I wouldn't have any issues, but the leak is right here, and it comes out around this spot where it's a bit beat up here. So what I'm going to do is first I'll get this O-ring off, and I'll get this surface cleaned up with some brake clean, make sure it's good and clean. Same thing with the inside here, just where there's crack is too. I'll get that cleaned up with some brake clean, make sure it's nice and clean, get all the then I'll hit this with a bead of Permatex, have it sealed up. So then I'll also then come up here and you can see right along, let me grab a screwdriver here, get the focus where I want it to. This is where that O-ring seats to, and I'll come along here with a light bead of Permatex as well, and that way when I bring these two halves together, that should seal that up, and I shouldn't have to worry about any more oil leaking out of there. Now just taking a look at what we've got done here, you can see there's just a light bit of squeeze out that came out around. And I put an extra bit in here where the leak was, so you can see the gray area. That's just some of the Permatex now in that little opening that was there. So now I'm going to give this stuff 24 hours to cure up for us, and we should be ready to get some oil back in this. So I'm just going to clear off this bit of squeeze out now with a piece of paper towel here, and then we're going to go ahead and look at mixing up some more JB Weld to get it on that broken bolt hole. So it's roughly 24 hours later, and now I've got both the Permatex that we used to seal this housing up and the little hole here, as well as the JB Weld we put back up on this again. That stuff is good and cured now. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes, put some paper towel here so I don't get dust everywhere, file this down so it looks decent, and then we'll go ahead and we'll put our cover back on. Some of you may notice this little piece of copper wire around the sprocket shaft here. This little black piece of metal usually goes in, and the position it sits in will lock it in place, but this thing has been wallered out, and it was when I rebuilt the bike anyways, but there was a little tiny piece of steel tie wire there that was just completely shot. So I decided to go back over and use a bit of copper. I know copper is a lot softer than steel, and over time that will be gone, but I'm going to order one of these new little washers to hold this sprocket on in the meantime anyways. I just wanted this for a temporary fix, and this is well sturdy. You can see I can pull on this all I want, that ain't coming off. So, and there's never any lateral force on this, so I'm not too concerned. Either way, let's go ahead and get this shaped, spray with a bit of spray paint, and we'll get this cover back on so we can move on to the next bit. So there's that much taken care of. I'll just give this 10 or 15 minutes to dry. I might even hit it with the heat gun to help dry it up a bit. But from this is about 2.5 feet away. It looks decent. And by the time the cover is actually up against that, I sneak through there, make sure this stays focused on what I'm looking at here, right there. Time the cover's on here. You'll never tell the difference anyways. I don't think you would anyways. As I'm whizzing by at 50 kilometers per hour. So yeah, I think that'll do just fine. So there's our sprocket guard back on the bike. Things are nice and secure. You can see there's a bit of a gap here. I'm going to assume that's because things are old, or who knows, maybe this is off the old 125 motor that used to be in this bike and they tried to put it on a 185. I figured it would all been the same. That's purely conjecture. I have no idea. Either way, that's back on. It's nice and secure. So I just want to toss the belly pan back on, keep the motor protected, and then we can move on to the next thing. So that's this side of things all buttoned up and good for the road. Hopefully. I think the next thing we're going to look at now is to see why our speedometer isn't registering. So I'm going to lower the bike down a little bit. We're going to pop the speedometer cable out, spin it with a drill, see if we can get the speedometer to work. So for those of you who aren't entirely aware of how a Speedo cable works on these older bikes, you got the side that goes into the hub, and that goes over a little flat, almost like a flathead screwdriver type thing, in the hub that's engaged with a gear inside the hub. So then when this rotates, when the wheel rotates, or that gear rotates, you'll see the wire at the top that goes in the back of the Speedo rotates as well. So what I need to do is I'm just going to go ahead, spin this while this is connected to the Speedo to see if we can get the actual Speedo to spin up for us. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I keep this end, hello focus, this end of the Speedo cable pressed down as far as I can using this bolt, just holding it there, and that way I can ensure that this end here, focus please, goes all the way up into the Speedo where it belongs. So let's give that a push up in there now, see if we can get this to spin. So now I've got my drill jerry-rigged. That's on fast speed, I'll put on slow speed here. Got this jerry-rigged, so I've got this flat screwdriver head that should go inside here, like so. So if I spin this, I'm spinning that cable inside. If it will focus for me, and now we can see the speedo. So let's just check the speedo, see if there's anything happening. Okay, so here's a view at the speedo. Let's give this a spin. Maybe in the right direction, maybe not. We'll see, and see if this is going to go first or not. Okay, there we go. Our drill is currently doing about 18 kilometers per hour. Now I'll go ahead and I'll turn this on to second speed, see how much faster we can get it going. Let's see. Nice, so now our speedo is doing 60 kilometers an hour, and you can even see the odometer spinning up. Okay, I'm going to connect this back to the front hub, and hopefully it'll continue to work for us going forward. So here's the next issue we have to work on, and hopefully this will show up on the camera. Maybe I'll have to, yeah, I'll just flick off the video light there. So this is what happens when we use the turn signal. So if I flick on left, right comes on, doesn't blink, no light on the dash. If I flick it to right, neither blinker, but light on the dash and no blink. So there's a combination of things are hooked up incorrectly here, as well as the 6-volt winker may be toast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, take the headlight out so we can get out all the wiring, and we'll just do a couple quick tests to see if we can get these front blinkers winking and the turn light coming on as well. Once we get that figured out, we can direct our attention to the back where we can try to get the tail light working and put the 2 back blinkers on and get those hooked up as well. So here's the where all the front wiring end up being stored. Now I'm looking here, I can already see that there's a wire disconnected here. I'm pretty sure that's for one of the blinkers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you guys away. I'm going to go ahead and yank all this stuff out, have a look through, trace my traces. I need to run in the house and grab my fluke meter so I can make sure I'm testing continuity through the right connections and stuff. And then when I'm ready to put it back together and I know what I did wrong, then I'll bring you guys back and let you know exactly what it was. So as it turns out, with regard to what side these lights are on, it was a me issue. There's a light blue connector here that's supposed to get a black and a light blue, and then there's an orange connector which is supposed to get a black and a light orange. But when I put these back on, the blinker assemblies I put on were on the wrong side. So I just went ahead and swapped those. One of them was also unplugged, so that's why one wasn't coming on. So now we get this situation. Like, flick the key on. If I put on the left blinker, which is your right, you'll see it'll come on. I'm also getting light on my turn signal indicator here. And if I do the same with the right side, my indicator comes on again up here, and I'm getting light out of here. So now the other thing is, we're not getting any blinking. So I'm starting to think, or I've always thought, that the winker on this bike is probably no good anymore. So I'm going to pull it off. We'll try the one off the old Honda Passport and see if we can make these blink. So you can see here under the tank, this is where the winker sits to in this little rubber holder here. I've slid that out most way. If I disconnect this one here, I've also got the one from the C70, the Passport Super Cub. So here's the one that came off the XL. You can see this is a Mitsuba FR2112. It's exactly the same as the one that came off of the Passport C70. So when the original is hooked up, so you can see gray terminal, black terminal, so we got gray wire, black wire. when I flick the blinker on, let's see, I can feel a click inside this very briefly, but then it doesn't blink. And then the light comes on. I feel that sudden little click and then nothing. Like it's trying to do something internally, but it just doesn't want to do it. So now when I try the one that came off of the Super Cub, you see this one's a lot cleaner. You'd figure it would be better or at least potentially working, but unfortunately it isn't. So same thing, hook up the gray to the gray, black to the black. Flick on the blinker, hear the click, but no blinking. So I think I got a case where both blinkers are bad. So since I've got two of these and both of these seem to be not working, I'm pretty confident that it's the relay themselves. What I'm going to do is I'm actually, because you can see this is only just crimped in 3 spots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one back off the bike. I'm going to disassemble it and we're going to see if we can find if there's any kind of corrosion or something on the clicker inside that's causing this to not work correctly. And I mean, the worst thing we can do to something that's broken is break it further. I'm not too concerned. I can always just order a replacement 6-volt winker as well. I just had to wait a little while before it gets here. In the meantime, if I want to use the bike, at least I'd have some indication of turn. They just wouldn't be blinking. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and clean off the spot on the bench. We're going to pop this apart and see if we can figure out what's on the go inside. So here's our friendly neighborhood electromechanical winker or relay. So you can see we have a capacitor. So electrically, I'm going to assume that this capacitor charges and discharges. As it does a couple things. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get close enough. I'll get the focus turned back on here. Right here you can see this moves. So it makes contact, breaks, makes contact, breaks contact, makes contact, and it breaks contact when the current induces magnetic attraction in this between this and that, pulls it away. So here's our electromechanical linker. Let me move my light back a bit here so we get a bit better light on this. I went ahead and made it such that this copper plate here that goes, you might be able to barely see this, goes in and out, is a lot closer to that magnet. And I also made a little bit of adjustment on this. So I just tested it and it appears to be working. So I'm going to pop this on. We're going to look in front of the bike, test out the blinkers. Keep in mind I'm probably still going to order a new one of these and probably just an electrical one to take the mechanical out of the equation, because that's why this one failed. But let's pop this on the bike and watch those blinkers blink. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that winker back off, put it back in its case, get that crimped over, test it one more time to make sure it's working. Then we're going to be turning our attention to the back end of the bike. So you can see there's a cluster of, or part of the wiring harness hanging down here. This is for the tail light. There's the same connection. There's a ground, a brown and a green on the back of the tail light. So let me grab that and I can show you. And this thing is muddy crusty right now, but if we look at the inside here, we'll see the brown, the green, and the ground. So that's for hooking up the tail light. I mean, I don't even know if this is going to work. I'm going to hook this up manually before we do that. But the first thing I want to do is get the other blinkers on. So I just picked up the left blinker stock to have a look at just quickly hooking this up, and I'm realizing that I probably rushed through this when I took this apart initially. So you can see how short this is cut off here. This goes all the way over to the light. And then the ground here, it'll also cut off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over to the bench, disassemble this, extend at least this wire, probably try to get some wire on this one, extend that as well, so we get something proper to work with when we try to hook this up. So, to the bench. So I'm just working on getting these wires extended coming out of the blinker housings, and I've only got 22 AWG kicking around, but this stuff is rated for 600 volts, so I should be all right, I believe. So I just went ahead and soldered. Surprisingly, I actually got solder to stick to the original wire, even though it was seemed like it was coated. I just tried to give it a good cleaning with some electrical contact cleaner, as well as made sure I'm using flux here, which I really don't have a lot left. But now this should be more than long enough to make that connection on the other side of the bike. So just plot that little bit of electrical tape once time around. This rubber on the inside has a little circle that sits over the head of the bolt there, but it's not staying stuck to it, so the rubber keeps flying out. So I just went ahead and put a piece of black tape around it. No one's going to see that when I'm whizzing by it. 120 kilometers per hour? Not likely. So we do have working blinkage. It does seem a little weak. I'm not sure if that might be the bulb or if it's just because the battery's still a bit low. But it's working, and that's what I care about most. So what I want to do is, I've got the tail light from the Honda Passport C70 Super Cub. I know this is a working light, so I'm just going to quickly hook it up here, fire the bike up, and confirm that the brake light is working for us. So here's my taillight socket, it's called. If I get some focus here, you can see here are the connections. It's the ground. It's pretty dirty right now. It's also cracked off. There's usually a big piece that hangs off this. The plate mounts to. The other thing is too, it's pretty rusty inside. This bike had no taillight lens, and so this was like this outside for 20 plus years. So I don't know if you'll be able to see into the socket where the bulb goes or not, but I've started using some electrical contact cleaner and some steel wool, and I'm starting to get that clean. But what I realized is I've probably got some, where are they to? Yeah, some various little Dremel attachments that I can use in there to clean it up. So there's these kind of little wheels here and some polishing compound. I should be able to get in there with that and polish most of that rust out. Then I can hit it with some electrical contact cleaner over here, if it'll focus. Yeah, there it goes. And then we should have good contact. So then I can put a couple wires on that, put a bulb in that, test out, and make sure it works. So it just took some time. So what I'm doing is when we have wires like this that are really dirty, hopefully this is focusing-ish. What I've been doing is I've been hitting them with some of the electrical contact cleaner, and then I've just been pulling on the copper strands with the steel wool, and it's cleaning off the black-blue corrosion, and it's giving me a chance to actually get stuff soldered. So now I've got nice tinned leads here. So we got our ground and our 2 light leads. So now what I can do, I'm going to put some extension cable on these, or some more wire on them essentially, so I can go over and test it out. So I'll bring you back when we're ready to test this out on the back of the bike. Okay, so I've just got my wires jerry together quickly. Green ground to green ground. Green yellow on here goes through a yellow and into green yellow in the harness, and then brown into black, back into brown again. So if I flick the key on and I press the foot brake, I get light. That's awesome. If I pull the hand brake, I get light. That's also awesome. So I'm content to say this works. I'm gonna clean this up, get some paint on this, see if we can't do something with the back of this so we can get a plate holder mounted to it, and then we'll see if we can get it mounted up to the bike. So that's it for the back end of the bike, minus getting a plate attached to here. So like I mentioned, I'll get my buddy Mark to 3D print me something, or I can make something out of a small piece of steel that I can bolt on this and have hanging down. I'll clean up any stuff that looks ugly here, make it nice and clean anyways, so it looks half normal. Anyways, I've got the loom taped up and up in the various little nibs and holders that hold on to that stuff up and under. So the last thing I need to do at this point, before I take this for a quick little ride, is I want to give that chain guard a quick cleaning up, and then we can go ahead and get that in place over the chain. So just clued up getting the chain guard on. The only couple things I got left to put on and I'm going to leave off for the time being. The rack is one. It was an aftermarket rack. I don't like the way it clamps this. I may modify it so I can bolt it to where the fenders bolt as well as where the seat bolts to. Otherwise you're going to have these clamps on this frame bar just chafing the shit out of it. I mean, I could put rubber in between it or something, but that's going to look ugly. And then the only other thing is nothing. Let's take this down and go for a scoot. So that's the old XL. It was a quick little scoot around the block. I'm going to put this away now because it's probably about 3 or 4 degrees out and my hands are completely froze solid. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one.